You begin in the last days of autumn, when the earth seems to hold its breath before the long sleep of winter. The fields that once shimmered with gold now lie bare, the stubble brittle beneath your boots. Frost edges the grass in delicate white lace, and each morning the air sharpens, filling your lungs with a crisp chill that makes you draw your cloak tighter.
The village moves slowly these days, as though everyone senses what is coming and dares not hurry too quickly into it.
Inside the cottages, families take stock of what has been gathered. Grain sacks are lined up carefully, counted and counted again. Each handful is measured not as food, but as days of life.
You see the father of one home crouch beside the bins, pressing his palm down on the sack's soft surface, then sighing quietly when he feels how shallow the grain lies beneath the cloth. In another house, a mother smooths the surface of beans in a clay jar, her hands trembling as she realizes how few are left.
Every gesture is deliberate, every glance heavy with worry. The first moment of tension comes when villagers gather at the communal granary. Someone whispers that the stores will not last, that the harvest was too poor, that the winter will be longer than the last. The words ripple through the crowd like a cold wind, making shoulders hunch and eyes flick nervously to the sky. People turn their faces upward, scanning the clouds for signs. Dark, heavy shapes roll across the horizon, and for a moment the village seems to pause, as if waiting for the heavens themselves to answer. At night, the wind grows restless. It pushes against the shutters, rattles loose thatch on the rooftops, and sends thin drafts creeping into every crack. The fire must be kept alive, but every log added feels like a sacrifice. Children lie awake, listening to the moan of the wind through the lanes. One child whispers to another that it sounds like spirits calling, and for a moment even the adults feel a shiver. The sound is only wind, but in hunger and fear, even wind can become a warning. Still, life continues with careful rhythm. The last vegetables are lifted from the fields, turnips, beets, carrots, each one brushed free of soil and tucked into pits lined with straw. The work is done with solemn silence, for everyone knows these roots must last months. A single rotten spot is cut away, and yet the waste feels painful. Nothing can be spared, not even the smallest slice. You bend low, hands numb from the cold earth, and you feel the same quiet desperation that rests on every back bent beside you. The third moment comes inside the cottage, when the grain jars are lifted and weighed again. The father holds one up and frowns, the bottom scrapes empty too soon. His wife counts out what is left, lips moving silently. Around them, the children watch, understanding more than their parents wish they did.
Then comes the whisper that chills the room more than the draft. They say this winter will be longer. The words hang like frost in the air.
No one speaks, but each heart feels heavier. And yet, in spite of fear, the village prepares with determination. Bundles of dried herbs are hung from rafters. Apples are wrapped in straw and stored in cool corners. Barrels of ale are sealed, though many are already half empty. Even the smallest things are saved: onion skins for flavoring, bones for broth, stale bread for thickening. Every scrap has a place in the struggle to endure. You see hope, too, tucked into these preparations. A child giggles as she sneaks a carrot from the pile, her face bright despite the cold. An elder hums softly while sweeping the last grain into a jar, her song the same one she sang in seasons of plenty. A man sharpens his axe, not with despair, but with the steady rhythm of someone who believes the forest will still give enough wood. These small moments stand like candles against the looming dark. When the first snow falls, the village is ready in the only way it can be, not with abundance, but with resolve. The flakes drift down silently, covering the fields in white, softening the harsh lines of the world. Children rush out to catch them on their tongues, laughing for a moment before being called back inside. The laughter is brief, but it lingers in your ears as you return to the fire. At night, as you sit beside the hearth, you feel both dread and determination. The coming winter may be long, the food too thin, the cold too sharp, but the village has prepared, and within each home the hearth glows faintly, keeping the darkness at bay. You close your eyes, letting the crackle of the fire and the sigh of the wind carry you gently into sleep, knowing that tomorrow the struggle will continue, and with it, the quiet courage of survival. Bread was the heart of survival for medieval peasants, though in the winter months it often bore little resemblance to the sweet white loaves imagined in feast halls or monasteries. What filled your bowl and warmed your hands was the dark loaf, heavy and dense, made from rye or barley, stretched with kim, husks, or even ground acorns. It was not a delicacy, but a shield against hunger. In your cottage, the mother bends over the table, sleeves rolled back, flour dusting her hands. She pours what remains of the grain into a wooden bowl, her eyes narrowing at how shallow the pile is. She knows it will not be enough to make a proper loaf, not when mouths wait eagerly around the fire. Beside her lies a sack of kem, coarse and bitter, the outer husks sifted away from finer flour. She hesitates, then tips it in, more than she has ever dared before.
The first moment of tension stirs. She fears the bitterness will overpower the bread, but without it, there will not be enough.
The spoon circles slowly, the mixture thickening into dough, heavy and rough beneath her hands. The oven is lit, logs crackling as heat builds. The dough, pressed into shape, is slid onto the hot stone. The smell begins to rise, earthy and sharp, filling the cottage with a reminder of sustenance. The children gather close, eyes wide, their mouths watering as the crust darkens. They remember brighter seasons, when loaves were lighter, sweeter, softer. But those memories belong to festivals, not to the hunger of winter. Still, the scent alone is enough to stir joy. At last, the loaf is pulled from the oven, its crust blackened at the edges. The father cuts it into slices, careful to make each one even. The children watch closely, eyes tracking every motion of the knife. One slice has a corner burned almost to charcoal, crisp and smoky. The second moment of tension flickers. Two of the children lunge for that slice, believing the burnt edge carries more flavor, more life. They argue briefly, voices raised, until the mother intervenes, dividing it down the middle. The children chew, still scowling but content at last. Hunger sharpens even quarrels into something small and fleeting. The loaf is passed around, each hand cradling a slice as though it were gold. You take your piece and bite carefully. The texture is coarse, the taste bitter, but it quiets the hollow ache inside. The bread crumbles against your tongue, leaving behind the rough grit of bran. You chew slowly, stretching each mouthful into minutes. Across the room, the youngest child gnaws happily, oblivious to bitterness, delighted by warmth alone. But bread is too precious to risk waste, and sometimes fate tests that resolve. As the father slices again, one piece slips, tumbling to the floor. It lands in the hearth's warm ashes, smudged with soot. For a heartbeat, everyone freezes. The loaf is small, the portions smaller still. Here comes the third moment. Will it be thrown away or saved? Without hesitation, the mother bends, brushes the slice against her apron, and sets it back on the table. No one objects. Hunger makes even ashes taste bearable. The child who receives it eats quietly, too grateful to complain. Around the table, the family chews in silence, the only sounds the crackle of fire and the scrape of knives against wooden plates. You notice how carefully each crumb is gathered, how not a fragment is allowed to fall to the ground. Even stale ends are tucked away for soaking into tomorrow's pottage. Bread is not simply food, it is survival measured in crusts. When the meal is done, the loaf is wrapped tightly in cloth and hidden away, guarded like treasure. The family leans back, bellies still not full but eased, spirits steadied. The dark loaf is bitter, heavy, imperfect, yet it is enough. Later, as you settle onto straw for the night, the taste still lingers on your tongue. You think of the mother's trembling hand as she added more bran, of the children's quarrel over the burnt slice, of the piece rescued from the ashes. These moments replay in your mind like echoes of the day. They are not grand stories, but they are the stories of survival. As your eyes close, the warmth of the oven still seems to cling to you, the scent of bread still drifting through your memory. Loaf may be humble, but it holds the power to carry a family through the winter, one heavy slice at a time. And with that thought, you drift into sleep, comforted by the quiet strength of the dark bread. If bread was the body of winter survival, then pottage was its soul. Every medieval cottage had a pot hanging above the hearth, and in that pot simmered the daily stew. It was never truly emptied, never truly begun.
Ingredients were added as they appeared: grains, beans, roots, scraps of meat if fortune smiled, and boiled until their flavors blended into a humble broth.
In your home, the pot rests above the fire, its iron sides blackened from years of use. Steam rises in faint curls, carrying a scent both familiar and thin. Tonight, the family gathers around it, bowls ready. The mother stands over the pot, longer than usual. She dips the ladle, frowns at the shallow level, and glances back at the children. Their eyes are wide with expectation. She sighs, softly, then lifts a jug of water. The first moment of tension arrives. She pours carefully, thinning what remains, stretching it for one more meal. The water swirls, lightening the color of the broth, but she says nothing. Survival demands quiet secrets. When the bowls are set down, steam fogs the air. The children lean close, spoons ready, eager for warmth. One child dips in, lifts a spoonful, and hesitates. The liquid drips thin, with only a few floating grains. "Why is it just water tonight?" the child asks softly, eyes puzzled. The second moment stings, words spoken innocently, but they pierce the silence like a cold wind. The mother smiles, brushing the child's hair, but does not answer. Instead, she lifts her own spoon, swallowing quietly, her eyes lowered. The meal continues in silence. Each spoonful tastes faintly of beans from yesterday, faintly of turnips from last week, faintly of herbs long since gone. The flavor is a memory more than a presence. Still, the family eats steadily, for even thin broth carries warmth. The father dips bread crusts into his bowl, letting them soak, softening their hardness. The children mimic him, their spoons scraping, their mouths working patiently.
Suddenly, as the mother stirs the pot for another ladle, a handful of leaves slips in from her apron, wild greens gathered hastily earlier that day.
Their bitterness spreads quickly through the broth, sharp against the tongue. The family tastes it, their expressions flickering. The third moment comes. They all know the taste is harsher, less pleasant, but no one speaks. They eat quietly, pretending the flavor is unchanged, because hunger allows no complaints. When the bowls are emptied, every drop is chaste. Children tilt their bowls to their lips, catching the last trickles. The pot is scraped clean, the thin residue treasured. Even the bitter leaves are swallowed with determination. Hunger has turned each spoonful, however meager, into a gift. Later, the pot is left hanging above the embers, waiting for tomorrow. It will not be washed. To do so would mean losing the layer of flavor clinging to its sides. Instead, it will hold whatever scraps can be found come morning: another crust, another root, another handful of beans. Always the same stew, always different, always enough to keep the family alive. As you lean back by the hearth, the taste of the broth still lingers. It was not filling, not rich, not pleasant. Yet it warmed your hands, it steadied your body, it softened the sharp edge of hunger. You think of the mother's secret pour of water, the child's innocent question, the bitter leaves eaten in silence. These moments form the rhythm of winter, small sacrifices, unspoken endurance, quiet acceptance. When you close your eyes, the fire's glow still flickers against your lids. You hear the gentle bubbling of the pot, the scrape of spoons, the hush of voices unspoken. And with those sounds, you drift into sleep, comforted not by fullness, but by the quiet resilience of the daily stew. Through the long months of winter, the earth itself seemed to close its hand around food. Nothing fresh grew in the frozen fields, no berries ripened in the hedges, no green shoots pierced the soil. What sustained you now was what had been hidden away in the autumn, the humble roots stored in pits and cellars. Carrots, beets, turnips and cabbages slumbered in straw-lined chambers beneath the cottages, sleeping as you waited for spring. You step into the cellar one evening, a lantern in your hand. The air is cool and damp, the smell of earth and straw sharp in your nose. Shadows cling to the corners, and the silence is heavy. At first, it seems reassuring. There are still baskets resting against the wall, still lumps beneath the straw. Yet as you crouch down, brushing away the husks, you notice how soft some of the roots have grown. The skin caves under your fingers, the smell sour. Here comes the first tense moment. One large turnip is mottled with mold. Do you cut away the rot and risk the sickness, or do you throw it out and lose precious food? The mother hesitates, knife in hand, before carving off the blackened part, whispering a prayer that the clean half will still nourish. In another corner, beneath a layer of sand where the family had buried some carrots, a child digs with eager hands. Suddenly, the small fingers close on something firm. With a cry of joy, the child lifts a carrot still bright orange beneath the grit, its skin wrinkled but intact. The second moment lifts the gloom, such a simple find, yet it feels like a miracle. The carrot is passed around, admired like a jewel, then set carefully aside to be shared later. Hunger has taught you that even one root can change the mood of a room, but the cellar also carries dangers that creep silently. As you sift through the straw, you hear a faint rustling. The lantern beam catches a quick flicker of movement, grey blur scurrying across the floor. The third moment comes as a fat rat darts from the shadows, a stolen potato clutched in its teeth. It vanishes into a crack before anyone can move. A gasp rises. The thought of vermin stealing from your stores chills you more than the winter air. Quickly, stones are pressed into gaps, traps set by the door. Every bite lost feels like a wound.
Still, you gather what can be salvaged: a handful of cabbages, their outer leaves peeled away, a basket of beets, rough-skinned but sweet within, a few carrots rescued from the sand.
They are not fresh, not plentiful, but they are enough to stretch another meal. Back in the kitchen, the vegetables are scrubbed, sliced and lowered into the pot. Their earthy scent rises with the steam, mixing with the faint sweetness of beet and the sharpness of cabbage. It is not a feast, but it steadies the family once more. Around the fire, bowls are filled with the softened roots. The children chew slowly, their eyes bright, despite the bitterness. The mother watches them with relief, the father with quiet pride that the cellar still held something worth saving. Even the memory of the rat does not dim the comfort of warm broth filling empty bellies. Later that night, as you lie on your straw bed, the lantern extinguished, you think of the cellar again. You remember the rotten turnip, the joyful carrot, the rat's sharp eyes. These moments linger, shaping the story of survival as much as the taste of the food itself. The cellar is not just storage, it is a place of gamble, of discovery, of loss and relief. And as you close your eyes, you imagine the roots still lying there in the straw, waiting quietly, holding their strength in the darkness. They will last only so long, but tonight, they are enough. And with that thought, you drift gently into sleep, comforted by the knowledge that beneath the earth, life still waits. Not every family could afford meat in the long winters, yet for those who had managed to keep a pig or goat, the salted and smoked cuts hanging in the rafters were a treasure beyond measure. The smokehouse and the chimney beams became vaults of survival, where every strip of bacon, every salted joint, every glistening shard of fat was guarded like gold. When you look upward, in the dim light of the cottage, you see the dark shapes hanging from hooks. Their surfaces are rough with salt crystals, edges hardened by weeks of drying. The smell of smoke lingers faintly in the air, mingling with the scent of the hearth. Each piece has been waiting, saved for when hunger would bite hardest. Now, as the days grow colder and the children's cheeks grow thinner, it is time. The first moment of tension comes as the father reaches up with his knife. His hand hovers, reluctant, for he knows that every slice taken now shortens what is left. At last, with a deep breath, he cuts down a slab that has hung since autumn. The knife scrapes, the fibers pull, and the meat falls heavy into his hands. The family watches in silence, their eyes fixed on the rare gift. It feels both like relief and like loss. The slab is laid on the table, its salt glinting in the firelight. Mother cuts carefully, thin slices that curl as they are laid onto the hot stone by the fire. The smell rises at once, rich, smoky, mouth-watering. Children lean forward, noses twitching, lips parting as though the scent alone might fill their bellies. The sizzle of fat in the pan is music, sharp and tender all at once. As the meat crackles, the father divides it into portions. But when his knife presses too close to the edge, one strip slides free, tumbling toward the hearth. The second moment strikes as it lands in the warm ash below. For a breath, no one moves. The meat lies smudged with grey dust, hissing faintly on the embers. The mother bends quickly, lifts it, brushes it clean with the edge of her apron, and sets it back on the plate. No protest is raised. Hunger makes even ash seem harmless. The slice is eaten without complaint, savoured as though nothing had happened. When the plates are set before the children, their eyes widen at the glistening sheen of fat. One child lifts the strip high, turning it in the firelight, marveling as though it were a jewel. The third moment glows here. What to you is survival, to them is wonder. They bite carefully, chewing slowly, letting the salt and smoke linger on their tongues as long as possible. Every mouthful is a gift, every swallow a victory. The meal is not plentiful. Each person eats only a small piece, softened with bread or dipped into pottage to stretch the flavor. Yet the warmth it brings spreads quickly, coloring faces with a faint flush. Spirits lift, conversation stirs, laughter even dares to rise. For a little while, the cottage feels alive again, carried by the richness of the smoked meat. When the meal ends, the remaining slab is wrapped tightly in cloth, hung back high in the rafters. It swings slightly in the draught, a silent reminder that more is still there, waiting for the next day of need. The children glance up at it before lying down, their eyes hopeful, their dreams already flavored by what they tasted tonight. Later, as you rest on your straw bed, the smoky taste still lingers faintly in your mouth. You think of the father's reluctant cut, the slice rescued from ash, the child holding a strip of fat like treasure. These moments linger in your mind like the smell of wood smoke in the rafters. They are not only about eating, but about what it means to keep hope alive in hard times. You close your eyes, hearing the faint creak of the beams above where the meat hangs. The memory of the meal warms you as much as the hearth, and so you drift into sleep, wrapped in the quiet comfort of salt, smoke, and the resilience of those who endure. Milk, butter, and cheese were luxuries in the medieval winter, especially for peasants who owned only a single cow or goat. In the bright months of summer, these animals had grazed freely, their udders heavy with milk. But when the pastures froze, their bodies grew thin, and with their strength faded the family's supply of dairy. You walk into the byre one cold morning, lantern flickering in the dim air. The cow stands quietly in the straw, her breath steaming, her sides hollow. Her ribs press through her hide like ridges in the land itself. When you sit down with the bucket, you press your hands gently, coaxing what milk she can still give. The sound is faint, only a thin trickle instead of the steady rhythm you remember. This is the first moment of tension, so little flows that you wonder if tomorrow there will be nothing at all. You stroke her side softly, whispering comfort, though your own heart trembles. Back in the cottage, the family waits as the bucket is carried in. Its contents are shallow, barely enough to cover the bottom. Still, the smell is sweet, the warmth faintly rising. The mother pours it into wooden cups, dividing it with practiced care. Each cup holds only a swallow or two, yet the children cradle them as though they are chalices. One drinks quickly, then looks down at the empty cup, eyes filling with longing. Just a little more, please. The second moment pierces, the child's voice trembling, the mother's hand pausing. Without a word, she tips half of her own share into the child's cup, smiling faintly as though it were nothing. Sacrifice becomes habit, and love disguises hunger. The father sits in silence, watching. Later that evening, as the family settles near the hearth, he clears his throat. His voice is low, heavy. He speaks of the cow, of her weakness, of how little she gives now. He suggests, carefully, that perhaps she should be sold. With the money, grain could be bought, grain that would fill bellies longer than these dwindling drops of milk. The third moment weighs heavily here. Sell the cow and gain food for weeks, or keep her and cling to the hope of calves and future milk? The question hangs in the smoky air, pressing on every heart. No decision is made that night. The mother stares into the fire, her hands folded, her lips tight with thought. The children lean drowsily against her, their cups empty beside them. The father sighs and says no more, though his eyes linger toward the byre outside. The choice is too sharp, too painful to be spoken further. When the family lies down to rest, the taste of milk still lingers faintly on the tongue, rich despite its scarcity. The children sleep more peacefully, their small bellies warmed by even that tiny swallow. You lie awake longer, listening to the cow shifting in the byre, her hooves muffled in straw. She is both burden and hope, frailty and promise. As sleep draws you down, you think of the 3 moments that shaped this day: the meager trickle into the bucket, the child's tearful plea, the father's heavy words. They weave together into a story of survival, one where every drop counts, where love hides itself in sacrifice, and where choices carry the weight of tomorrow. You close your eyes, the faint sweetness of milk still in memory, and drift gently into dreams. The cow's quiet breath in the byre becomes like a lullaby, reminding you that even in scarcity, there is still something left to hold on to. When the fields were bare and the cellars grew emptier with each passing week, the rivers and ponds became quiet havens of hope. Fish was more than food. It was a promise that something still moved beneath the frozen surface, waiting to be caught by steady hands and patient hearts. For peasants bound by fasting days of the church, fish was not only survival but duty, a permitted gift on tables where meat was forbidden. On a grey morning, the father takes up his net, its ropes patched again and again, and makes his way toward the river. The children follow at a distance, their breath white in the air, their boots crunching frost. The path is slick, ice clinging to the edges where water once ran. The first moment of tension comes when his foot slides suddenly on a patch of hidden ice. He staggers, arms flailing, nearly tumbling into the frigid current. The children gasp, their hearts leaping, but he steadies himself at the last instant, planting his staff firmly into the ground. The danger passes, but the fear lingers. At the riverbank, the water lies still, thin ice glazing its edges. The father casts the net with practiced rhythm, the ropes hissing through the cold air. The children watch with wide eyes, whispering prayers that something will be caught. Minutes stretch slowly, each one filled with the sound of water lapping against stones. At last, the net is drawn back. Shapes flicker within, silver flashes of life. The children cry out in joy, but as the net is lifted, its cords tear, a hole opening wide. The second moment stabs, most of the fish slip free, vanishing back into the dark water. Only one remains tangled, thrashing weakly against the ropes. That one fish is carried home with reverence, its body laid gently on the table as though it were a treasure. The mother cleans it carefully, her knife moving with skill, her face solemn. The children gather close, watching each motion, their mouths watering at the scent already rising from the flesh. Yet they know it must be stretched as far as possible. The fish is set into the pot, boiled with herbs and scraps of root, its flavor seeping into the broth. When the bowls are filled, each portion is small, more water than flesh. Still, the taste is rich compared to days of plain bread and pottage. The fish itself is divided into tiny pieces. The father's knife slices carefully, each sliver thinner than a finger. The third moment plays out as the family shares, own fish split among many hands, each bite precious. A child holds their piece aloft, marveling at how it glistens in the firelight, then eats slowly, savoring every chew. The broth is sipped eagerly, the steam warming cold faces. Conversation stirs, lighter than in many days, as though the fish has brought not just nourishment but spirit. When the meal ends, nothing is wasted. Bones are saved for broth tomorrow, the pot scraped clean. The memory of the fish lingers, a bright moment in the long shadow of winter. The children fall asleep with smiles faintly on their lips, dreaming of silver scales flashing in dark water.
You lie down beside the hearth, your own belly warmed by the broth, your mind replaying the day, the stumble on the ice, the torn net, the single fish divided into many pieces.
These moments become part of the quiet story of survival, reminders that even when much is lost, something can still be gained. As sleep overtakes you, you hear the river in your dreams, flowing steady beneath its icy skin. You see nets cast again, and you know that as long as the water moves, there will always be hope. And with that thought, you drift into rest, comforted by the memory of silver and the taste of broth. When the stores in the barn grow hollow and the cellar yields little but shriveled roots, there is still one hope left, the wild land beyond the village. Even in the heart of winter, the forest and hedgerows hide secrets for those willing to search. Foraging becomes less a pastime and more a quiet struggle, a way to find one more meal in the bleak landscape. You set out with a small group, baskets in hand, your breath white in the frosty air. The snow crunches beneath your boots, branches hang heavy with ice and silence presses on all sides. Yet you know that beneath the frozen earth, life still lingers, tubers buried deep, nuts fallen beneath leaves, stubborn greens clinging to survival. Near the edge of the woods, you spot a cluster of berries still clinging to their stems, their skins dark against the snow. Your fingers twitch toward them, but an elder beside you grips your wrist. The first moment of tension stirs. These berries are poisonous, deadly if eaten. The beauty hides danger, and you feel a shiver as you step back. The elder shakes her head, reminding you in a whisper that hunger must never cloud caution. The group moves deeper into the woods. A child, cheeks flushed from the cold, kneels to dig in the soil with eager hands. After moments of scraping, their fingers close around something solid. With a triumphant cry, they lift a wild tuber from the earth, its skin rough but edible. The second moment sparks joy, such a small thing, yet enough to make the child's eyes shine. The tuber is held aloft like treasure, then placed carefully in the basket. The others smile faintly, their spirits lifted by this humble discovery. You gather more corns left from autumn, nettle leaves hidden beneath frost, the forest grows darker. The sun sets early in winter, shadows deepening under the branches. Then, from high above, comes a sudden sound, the long, mournful cry of an owl. Its call echoes through the stillness, eerie and commanding. The third moment chills the group. The old stories say owls are omens, messengers of spirits and forest gods. For a heartbeat, no one moves. The children clutch their baskets tightly. The adults glance at one another with uneasy eyes. But hunger presses stronger than fear, and slowly, work resumes. Still, the sound lingers in your chest long after it fades. By the time you return to the village, your baskets are not full, but not empty either. A handful of tubers, a bundle of nettle leaves, a small pile of acorns, enough to stretch the pot for one more night, perhaps two. Mother boils the tubers, softening their flesh, while the nettles are tossed into the stew. The taste is bitter, earthy, but it warms the body, and the family eats in silence, grateful for what the wild has offered. When the meal ends, the baskets are empty again, but the memory of discovery remains. The poisonous berries avoided, the triumphant cry of the child with the tuber, the eerie echo of the owl all settle in your mind like threads of a tale.
Hunger has taught you that survival is not only in the barn or cellar, but in the hidden corners of the forest, where danger and salvation lie side by side.
Later, as you lie on your straw bed, the taste of nettles still sharp on your tongue, you think of the owl's cry. It was not just fear, it was a reminder that the world is still alive, still speaking, even in the coldest season. And with that thought, you drift gently into sleep, your dreams filled with baskets, with roots, with the quiet resilience of foraging in winter's grip. When the cold deepens and fresh food vanishes from the fields, the jars and barrels tucked into the corners of the cottage become treasures. In summer and autumn, families had salted cabbages, pickled turnips, stored sour ale, and packed vegetables under brine. These simple preparations now stand as lifelines, small bursts of flavor that cut through the dullness of bread and broth. The cellar smells, sharp with vinegar and salt. Clay crocks line the shelves, their lids heavy with stones to keep the contents submerged. Each one holds a memory of warmer months, transformed by time into something sour, tangy, and strangely comforting. One afternoon, the mother lifts the lid of a large crock, intending to scoop out turnip slices for the pot. But the stone lid slips in her hand, crashing to the ground. The first moment of tension bursts as the jar tips, its brine spilling across the floor. The smell of vinegar fills the air as turnip slices scatter. Everyone rushes to save what they can, snatching pieces from the rushes before they vanish into the dirt. What is lost feels heavier than it should, for each slice is worth a meal. Later, the father draws a mug of ale from a wooden barrel. The liquid foams faintly, sour with age. He raises it, sniffs, and grimaces. The taste has gone sharp, almost biting. The second moment comes as he drinks anyway, swallowing the sourness with a clenched jaw. The children laugh nervously, but they understand it may taste unpleasant, but it still warms the belly and steadies the spirit. Waste is a luxury none can afford. At supper, the mother opens a jar of pickled cabbage. The lid lifts with a pop, and a pungent odor rushes into the room. The children wrinkle their noses, the father coughs, and for a moment everyone hesitates. The third moment lingers in the air. Will this meal be endured or refused? Slowly, the mother serves it, mixing it into the pottage.
Though the smell is strong, the taste proves sharper than expected, and soon the family is eating steadily, their faces softening as the sourness fades into warmth.
These jars do more than feed the body. They remind the family of the changing seasons, of the summer labor that made survival possible. Each mouthful carries the memory of green fields, of sweat dripping under the sun, of hands pressing salt into cabbage leaves. The sharp tang awakens the senses, breaking the monotony of plain bread and broth. When the meal ends, the jars are sealed again, their contents diminished but still precious.
The floor is scrubbed where the brine spilled, the laughter fades where the ale turns sour, and the strong smell of cabbage lingers in the air long after the bowls are empty. Yet there is comfort in knowing that tomorrow another jar will wait, another taste will surprise, another memory of summer will reach across the cold.
That night, as you lie down, the scent of vinegar still clings faintly in the air. You think of the spilled brine, the sour ale, the sharp cabbage. These moments feel vivid, yet softened by gratitude. Even spoiled or pungent, the pickled stores keep hunger at bay, and for that you are thankful. You close your eyes with the image of rows of crocs lined in shadow, each one a guardian of survival. They are humble, ordinary, imperfect. But they are enough. And with that thought, you drift gently into dreams, your sleep flavored by the tang of pickles and the quiet endurance of winter. As the winter drags on, the stores that once seemed carefully measured begin to dwindle. The jars are lighter each time they are lifted, the sacks sag lower against the wall, and the sound of emptiness grows louder in every corner. Rations must be made thinner, each portion stretched further, each meal divided with greater care. The mother crouches before the grain jar one morning, her hand deep within its shadow. Her fingers scrape the bottom, pulling up only dust and a few scattered kernels. The first moment of tension comes as she taps the clay sides, the hollow echo filling the room. The children fall silent, their eyes fixed on her hand as she lifts the last meager grains. She presses her lips together, pours them into a wooden bowl, and shakes the jar once more, but nothing stirs. The sound of hollowness is sharper than any word. At the table, a crust of bread is broken into pieces, smaller than a palm. The children chew slowly, but hunger sharpens their eyes, making them scan the floor for more. The second moment flickers when one child crawls beneath the bench, searching for crumbs fallen in earlier days. Their small fingers pick at the rushes, lifting a speck of stale bread as though it were treasure. The sight pierces the parents' hearts, yet no one scolds. Instead, the crumb is placed solemnly into a small hand, and the meal continues in silence. When supper comes, the father takes what is left, one small loaf, rough and heavy with bran. He sets it on the table, knife in hand. The children watch intently, knowing there will not be enough to satisfy. Slowly, carefully, he cuts, dividing the loaf into 4 equal slices. His hands shake slightly with the effort to be fair. The third moment hangs in the air. No one dares speak. No one dares ask for more. The slices are placed before them, each portion thin, each bite swallowed with reverence. The pottage is thinner now, nearly water. Bread crusts soften in the broth, stretching flavor where none remains. The children sip quietly, their spoons scraping the bottom of bowls already empty. The parents eat more slowly, pretending to savor, but in truth leaving part behind for the little ones. Hunger has taught sacrifice as surely as it has taught patience. When the bowls are cleaned, they are stacked neatly by the fire. The family leans together, bellies not full but quieted for the moment. Outside, the wind moans through the thatch, a reminder of how much winter still remains. Inside, the fire burns low, its warmth thin but steady. Later that night, you lie awake, the taste of thin broth still on your tongue. You think of the hollow sound of the jar, the child searching for crumbs, the father's careful slices. These images linger, sharper than hunger itself. They are the story of survival told not with words, but with silence, sacrifice, and the weight of every bite. As sleep overtakes you, you drift into dreams where the jars are full again, the bread thick and sweet, the bowls brimming. The dream feels distant, but it steadies you nonetheless. You rest knowing that even the thinnest ration, when shared, carries strength enough to last one more day. Hunger could have broken a village apart, turning each cottage inward, each family clutching their meager stores. Yet in the deep winters of the medieval world, it was often the opposite that happened. Neighbors leaned on one another, weaving a fragile net of generosity strong enough to catch those who might otherwise fall. The food was scarce, but kindness was never truly empty. The lanes of the village are quiet in the snow, smoke drifting faintly from chimneys. Each home shelters its own secrets of hunger. Yet now and then, doors open softly, and hands reach out not to take, but to give. These are not grand gestures, no feasts shared, no granaries thrown wide, but small acts, almost invisible. And yet, they matter most of all. The first moment the onion in the sleeve. You are walking past a cottage when you notice an old woman shuffling along, her back bent, her steps unsteady. Her cloak hangs loosely from her shoulders, patched and faded from many winters. She pauses at a neighbor's door and glances over her shoulder, as though afraid of being seen. Then, with a quick movement, she slips something from her sleeve into the other woman's hand. It is an onion, small and wrinkled, its papery skin crackling in the cold. The neighbor gasps, her fingers curling around it tightly. For her family, it will mean flavor in the pot, a little warmth in the belly. The two women exchange no words, only a nod, a faint smile, and then the door closes. You watch the old woman continue on her way, her hand now empty but her face calm. That onion was perhaps the last she had hidden, yet she gave it anyway. In that single act, you feel the weight of true generosity, the willingness to share even what cannot be spared. The second moment the potato for a toy later that day, children gather near the well, their laughter thinner than in summers past. One boy spins a wooden top, chipped and faded, but still bright when it whirls across the frozen ground. Another child, cheeks hollow, eyes the toy longingly. He holds something behind his back, small potato, hard and lumpy, no bigger than a fist. With a hesitant smile, he offers it forward. The trade is quick, the toy for the tuber. The boy who receives the potato clutches it like treasure, already imagining it steaming in the pot that evening.
The other child spins the top once more, grinning as though for a moment he has forgotten his hunger.
It is the second moment, where survival and play meet, where a potato becomes as precious as laughter. Watching them, you realize that even the smallest trade can bring balance, joy for food, food for joy. The third moment, the hidden jar of beans, night falls, and the village lies hushed beneath a blanket of snow. From your cottage, you see a figure moving quietly along the lane, a lantern hidden beneath their cloak. They stop before a poor family's door, crouching to set something down. When the figure slips away, you step closer, curious. On the doorstep rests a clay jar, its lid sealed with wax. The poor family opens the door moments later, startled by the sight. The father lifts the jar with both hands, opens it, and stares in disbelief. Inside lie beans, lump, clean, enough to last many days. The mother presses her hand to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. The children crowd around, their faces lit by candlelight, their smiles breaking through the gloom. No one knows which household gave the gift, and no one asks. The third moment glows here, charity offered in silence, dignity preserved in secrecy. The family will eat, and the giver will sleep knowing they shared, though their name is never spoken. The web of quiet giving these 3 moments are only part of a larger pattern. Day by day, the village weaves together a fragile web of generosity. A farmer offers a handful of oats to a neighbor in exchange for nothing more than a promise. A woman leaves a loaf of coarse bread on a windowsill and disappears before thanks can be spoken. A child sneaks a crust into the pocket of her friend, pretending not to notice when it is found. Each act is small, barely enough to notice in the scale of hunger. Yet together they form a shield stronger than walls, stronger even than barns filled with grain. Because when one cottage has a little more and another has none, sharing becomes the difference between life and death. The silence afterward, when you return to your own hearth that evening, you think of these scenes, the onion in the sleeve, the potato for the toy, the secret jar of beans. They play again in your mind like a quiet song. You realize that hunger teaches not only sacrifice within families, but generosity between them. The house is still, the fire burning low. The children sleep, their breaths soft. Outside, the snow falls steadily, blanketing the village in silence.
Somewhere, another family is eating beans from a hidden jar, another child is spinning a toy top in joy, another mother is slicing an onion with tears of relief.
These images soothe you, reminding you that you are not alone. The lesson woven into the night as you lie down, you feel warmth that does not come from food, but from memory. The body may remain hungry, but the heart is steadied by kindness. You drift into sleep with the sense that the village itself breathes as one body, each home connected to the other by unseen threads. Tomorrow, hunger will still press. The barns will still echo hollow. But tonight, you rest in the comfort of knowing that even in scarcity, there is sharing. Even in want, there is generosity. And even in silence, there is love. Through the bitterest winters, when food was thinnest and fear pressed most heavily, people turned to faith as both refuge and rhythm. The church did not feed every stomach, but it gave shape to hunger, turning empty days into sacred hours, turning thin meals into offerings of devotion. Bells marked the passage of time, candles marked the presence of hope, and fasting, ironically, became a way to endure scarcity with meaning. Wake in the dim chill of dawn, the air so cold it nips at your breath. From beyond the walls of the cottage, a sound drifts clear, the slow toll of the church bell. Its voice is solemn, rolling across the frozen fields, calling the faithful to prayer.
The first moment of tension arrives as the tone becomes recognizable. It is not the bright peal of morning mass. but the long, drawn-out toll of mourning.
Somewhere in the village, death has come. The family pauses in their work, heads bowing instinctively. No words are needed. The bell carries its own message. Hunger and winter have claimed another neighbor. The children fall silent, and for a moment the only sound is the echo of the bell fading into the cold air. Later that day, you make your way to the small stone church, its walls rough but steady, its windows glowing faintly with the light of candles inside. Within, the smell of beeswax and incense mingles with the faint tang of unwashed wool cloaks. The villagers gather on wooden benches, shoulders pressed close, voices joining in chants that rise like smoke. The priest speaks of endurance, of the trials of the saints, of heaven's reward for patience in suffering. And though your stomach growls, the rhythm of the words soothes you, making hunger feel like part of a larger story. In the monastery nearby, the monks live by rules even stricter than yours. Their tables are plain, their bowls filled only with thin vegetable broth, their loaves black and coarse. Yet they share what little they have. One evening, as a poor family arrives at the gate, a novice monk carries out a small pot of pottage. His hands tremble with cold, his own stomach empty. Still, he places the pot into their hands, lowering his eyes humbly.
The second moment unfolds here. He has given away his own portion, leaving himself with nothing.
His superior watches from the shadows, but says nothing. Generosity, even when unwise, is still a form of prayer. The calendar of the church continues regardless of famine. Feast days and fast days arrive in order, demanding observance whether cupboards are full or empty. On one holy day in late winter, the villagers gather after service to share a meal. There is no goose, no pies, no barrels of ale as in better years. Only dark bread, heavy with husk, and a few dried fish split among many hands. The third moment arrives here. Children look at the thin table and frown, expecting celebration, but the adults begin to sing. Voices rise, filling the stone hall with hymns that echo against the rafters. Hunger is not banished, but it is softened by the sound, by the reminder that even meager food can be sacred when shared in gratitude. As the weeks pass, fasting becomes less a religious duty and more a fact of life. Yet the rituals lend dignity to it.
The mother sets only bread and broth on the table. She crosses herself first, whispering that it is an offering as much as a meal.
When the father bows his head at dawn, he thanks God not for plenty, but for endurance. Children learn the words of Psalms as easily as they learn to chew slowly, making each bite last. Evenings in the church bring candles glowing against the dark stone, their flames trembling but constant. Voices chant in Latin, words not all understood, but felt deeply. You sit in the back, your hands clasped, your stomach hollow, yet your heart steadier. The flicker of light, the rise of voices, the smell of smoke all weave together into a comfort greater than any feast. When you return to the cottage, the silence feels softer. The fire burns low, but you are warmed by the memory of Som. The children sleep curled together, their faces calm despite their empty bellies. You think again of the bell's toll for the dead, the novice monk's sacrifice, the simple feast of bread and fish. Each moment lingers, shaping the way you see hunger, not only as suffering, but as a thread binding you to faith, to neighbor, to a story larger than yourself. Lying down, you pull the rough blanket close and close your eyes. The psalms still echo faintly in your ears. The scent of incense clings to your memory. Hunger may remain, but so does belief. And with that thought, you drift gently into sleep, the rhythm of fasting turned into the rhythm of rest. When hunger gnaws deepest, the mind finds its own way to feed the spirit.
In the dim winter evenings, when the fire burns low and the cupboard offers little, families turn inward not only to food at hand, but to memories and dreams of food that once was or could be again.
These dreams, though made of nothing, give strength enough to endure another day. You sit with the family near the hearth, the air heavy with the faint smell of smoke and boiled cabbage. The children curl beneath blankets, their eyes half closed but their thoughts alive. One child stirs, sitting up suddenly, and whispers excitedly.
The first moment of tension glows here. The child speaks of a dream from the night before, a table stretched endlessly, laden with honey cakes, golden loaves, roasted meats glistening with fat.
Their voice trembles with delight as they describe reaching out for a slice of cake so soft it melted in their hands. The others listen wide-eyed, hunger sharpening the sweetness of the tale. For a few minutes, it feels as if the feast is real, shared among them in the telling. Father smiles faintly, then leans forward, his face lit by the fire's glow. He begins to tell of a feast he remembers, long ago, when the harvest was strong and the whole village gathered to celebrate. His words paint a picture of tables groaning with food, apples baked in honey, wheels of cheese, pitchers of ale passed from hand to hand. He speaks of laughter, of music, of torches burning late into the night. But as his voice deepens, it falters. The second moment cuts softly, his eyes cloud, his throat tightens, and his story trails into silence. The memory is too rich, too heavy against the thin reality of now. For a while, only the crackle of the fire fills the space. The mother rests a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. The children lean closer, eager to hold onto the images. Slowly, the room quiets into a different kind of silence, not one of sorrow, but of shared imagination. Each person sits with eyes half shut, picturing their own feast. Third moment unfolds quietly, no one speaks, but all imagine together, butter melting on warm bread, the taste of sweet apples, the scent of roasting meat. Hunger sharpens memory into flavor, and in that silent communion, the family almost believes they can taste what they imagine. The candle burns lower, its wax pooling slowly. The youngest child still smiles faintly, whispering fragments of the dream, while the others nod as if remembering it too. For a time, the empty bowls on the table seem less heavy. The air feels warmer, filled with the invisible aroma of imagined food. These dreams do more than distract from hunger. They preserve memory, passing it forward like a torch. Children who never tasted such feasts before now carry the image, ready to recall it in their own lean winters. Fathers remember abundance not as cruelty, but as promise that the earth can be generous again. Mothers listen to dreams and store them in their hearts as gently as seeds, waiting for spring to bring them alive once more. When the family drifts into sleep, the dreams follow. One child murmurs softly, as though still chewing honey cake. Another sighs deeply, smiling in their slumber. The father lies awake longer, replaying his memories, trying to hold the taste on his tongue a little longer. The mother closes her eyes and imagines baking bread again, kneading it with strong hands, watching it rise golden in the oven. You, too, feel the pull of these visions. You close your eyes and find yourself seated at a table spread wide, candles flickering, laughter filling the hall. The bread is warm in your hands, the butter melting, the honey dripping sweet. Though your belly is empty, the dream feeds you in a way no broth ever could. And when you finally surrender to sleep, it is with the taste of abundance in your mouth, not real, but real enough. Dreams cannot fill cupboards, but they can fill hearts. And sometimes, in the leanest of winters, that is the truest nourishment of all.
The long winter seems endless, each day a mirror of the last, snow upon snow, gray sky upon gray sky, and meals so thin they blur together.
Yet slowly, almost secretly, the world begins to change. The light lingers a little longer each evening, the air softens, and beneath the frost, life stirs again. The first signs of spring are fragile, but to those who have endured hunger, they are nothing less than miracles. One morning, while walking the edge of the field, a child suddenly stops, pointing with wide eyes. There, pushing through the thawing soil, is a cluster of green shoots, honey cabbages or wild mustard, their leaves curled, trembling in the cold breeze.
The first moment of tension sparks into joy. The child cries out, their voice ringing through the quiet air, calling everyone to come and see.
Adults hurry over, kneeling down, their rough hands brushing gently over the tender leaves. The sight feels like a promise, a whisper from the earth that the season of emptiness is ending. Though small, though fragile, those shoots seem to carry all the strength of a harvest yet to come. Later that week, the mother goes to the loft to check the bins once more. Most are hollow, echoing with her touch, but in a shadowed corner she finds a small bundle. Wrapped in straw are a few apples, shriveled and brown, overlooked in the autumn sorting. She lifts them with trembling hands, their skins wrinkled, their scent faint but sweet. The second moment unfolds, such a discovery feels like stumbling upon treasure. She brings them down, polishing them on her apron, and divides them carefully. Each bite is tart, soft and mealy, but it tastes of sun, of summer, of orchards heavy with fruit. For a moment, the family chews with eyes closed, savoring not the apple itself, but the memory of abundance it carries. Soon after, the church bell rings again, but this time its tone is different. It is not the slow toll of morning, nor the hollow call of fasting. Instead, it peals brightly, echoing across the thawing fields, each note carrying upward like birdsong. The third moment blossoms. The villagers pause in their work, lifting their heads, their hearts suddenly lighter.
The priest announces that spring has come, that fields will soon be plowed, that fasting will give way to feasting once more.
The sound of the bell is like sunlight in sound, warming everyone who hears it. In the days that follow, the signs multiply. The river, once sealed in ice, begins to move again, its surface breaking into shimmering fragments. Birds return, their calls sharp and alive. The air smells faintly of wet earth instead of ash and smoke. Families step out of their cottages more often, stretching limbs stiff from months of confinement, speaking to neighbors with voices lifted by cautious hope. The meals remain thin, but they are flavored now with expectation. A handful of nettles boiled into broth tastes sweeter when you know more greens will soon follow. Bread baked with the last of the grain is eaten more joyfully when fields are ready to receive seed again.
Even the children seem livelier, their games louder, their laughter freer, as though their bodies sense before their minds that the worst is passing.
At night, the family gathers as before, but the silence is different. Where once it was heavy with fear, now it hums faintly with hope. The children whisper about the cabbages sprouting, asking when they will be ready to eat. The mother smiles, shaking her head gently, but her eyes shine. The father speaks of ploughing, of seeds hidden in jars, of the promise of rain. Their voices are low, but steady, and in them lies the rhythm of life returning. You lie down to rest. You close your eyes and picture the green shoots pushing higher, the apples shining in the mother's hands, the church bell ringing across the thawing fields. These images soothe you more than food could, filling your mind with the taste of spring. And so you drift into dreams where fields stretch wide and golden, where baskets overflow, where hunger is only a memory. But tonight, the signs of spring are enough to carry you into peaceful sleep. The long shadow of winter has finally begun to lift. The snow recedes into damp earth, the days lengthen, and the air hums faintly with birdsong. The fields are not yet golden, but their promise is visible in the furrows, where green shoots rise steadily. The hunger months have ended, not with sudden abundance, but with the steady return of food to the table. Inside the cottage, the fire burns brighter than it has in months. The table rests a loaf of bread, freshly baked, its crust golden, its scent filling the room like incense. For the first time in what feels like forever, the family gathers not with fear, but with anticipation. The first moment of tension lingers as the loaf is set down. Will there truly be enough for all? Or is it only a dream made solid? The knife presses into the crust, steam escaping, and the slices are thick, hearty, generous. Relief floods the room as each plate receives a piece, not a scrap. Candles flicker gently, their light softening the walls. The children eat eagerly, their mouths full, their eyes shining. One child laughs aloud, a sound that startles the others. It has been so long since laughter rose so easily at the table. The mother watches, her smile quiet but deep, her shoulders loosening for the first time in months.
The second moment blooms when she realizes she no longer has to give away her own portion in secret sacrifice.
She cuts herself a slice, thick and warm, and eats it alongside her children. The bread is sweet with grain, the butter spread thick, and her joy is as nourishing as the meal itself. As the evening settles, the church bell rings again, drifting through the cool spring air. This time it is not a toll of mourning, nor the flat call of fasting, but a bright, jubilant peal.
The third moment resonates here, its sound is a hymn of thanksgiving, echoing across the village, each note a reminder that survival has become life again.
Families pause at their tables, bowing their heads, whispering prayers of gratitude. In every home, relief mingles with reverence. The table tonight is not lavish. It holds bread, a pot of stew flavored with fresh greens, a jug of ale newly brewed, yet it feels like a feast beyond measure. The children chatter between bites, their cheeks flushed, their hands reaching without hesitation. The father leans back, smiling faintly as he watches, his heart lighter than it has been in months. The mother hums softly as she clears crumbs, her voice steady, her eyes bright. When the meal ends, no one rushes from the table. They sit together in the glow of fire and candle, savoring not just food but the presence of one another, whole and safe. The plates are empty, but the hunger that once haunted every corner has finally lifted. What remains is fullness not only of stomachs, but of spirit. Later that night, when the children sleep soundly, The parents sit quietly by the hearth. The father whispers that the worst has passed. The mother nods, her hand resting on his.
They listen to the distant peal of the bell, its echo carrying across the village, and know it is more than sound. It is a signal that life continues, that the story of survival has reached a new chapter.
You lie down, closing your eyes with the memory of warm bread still on your tongue, the glow of candlelight still in your mind. You think of the long months behind, the jars scraped hollow, the crumbs gathered from the floor, the thin rations divided with trembling hands. Those moments will not vanish. But tonight they are softened by gratitude. The table has been restored, the family gathered, the hunger eased.
As sleep comes, you drift gently into dreams not of scarcity, but of abundance, fields heavy with grain, orchards filled with fruit, and tables that will never again feel empty.
The famine months are behind you, and before you lies the promise of seasons to come.